know what that translates to in American money, but in the UK, it costs £220. I would pay $1 for it. Matter of fact, somebody offering me for free. I don't know if I'd take.
Radio Free Innsmouth, episode 368. About to cover a band I've wanted to talk about for a while. Time to finally knuckle down and do it. Mystifier from Brazil. Absolutely classic, essential black metal band. If they count as war metal, they're probably my favorite exponent of the genre after Beherit. And nowadays, it seems like they're often brought up in the context of some sort of 90s feud with goat penis on account of the Mystifier fellas being swarthier than the goat penis fellas would like. I mean, from where I'm standing, you guys are all Brazilian. I've watched Vine Sauce before. I know what you people do to pizza.
And you're all going to hell.
But seriously, from everything I've read from the actual bands themselves, that sort of hostile back and forth was more a thing of the past. I actually found a rather recent interview with Beelzebub, the main Mystifier guy in Bardo Methodology, where he was like, I don't know, I've known Sabaoth, one of the main Goat Moon guys, since back when he was in a grindcore band in the early 90s, and he seemed like a cool dude to me. So maybe it really is more the fan base is carrying that feud on at this point, even if it still exists. And while I do like me some goat penis,
Pause. I ain't with that. Brothers on the down low.
if there is such a fan base clash going on, probably coming down on the side of Mystifier, because they're a pretty spectacular band. I'd say they might be the founders of second wave black metal in Brazil. Usually when one says the term second wave black metal, they're generally talking about the Scandinavian stuff, but if you think about it, the Greeks kind of had their own second wave thing going on, building off the 80s stuff in an entirely new style with bands like Rotting Christ, Verathron, Necromantia, that kind of thing. Brazil kind of had their own second wave of black metal. Bands like Amen Corner, Murder Rape, Profane Creation, that sort of thing. Mystifier are undoubtedly the instigators of that particular stylistic development, at least to my ears. And like other forms of second wave black metal going on around the globe, what they did was take black metal of the 80s and really run with it, increasing the extremity, the complexity, the dark atmosphere, the sense of evil.
The evil.
A lot of the Scandinavian bands use Bathory and Hellhammer as their principal jumping off points. The guys in Mystifier are undoubtedly fans of those particular two acts, but at least to my ears, it seems like the principal springboard for their sound was Sarcophago, which is why Mystifier are often brought up as a war metal band, because Sarcophago had plenty of stuff that sounded like this. And Mystifier's got plenty of parts in their songs that take that sort of thing and make it even more extreme. But what not as many people seem to mention about Sarcophago as a foundational war metal influence is that they also had a lot of stuff more along the lines of and Mystifier also took that sort of thing and made it into their even more extreme version of it. And their primary innovation on the sound was to have both of those sonic elements coexist naturally within the same songs instead of separated out into this is the slow song, this is the fast song. This is a big part of what makes Mystifier interesting. It's also why their songs tend to be a lot longer in runtime than many other bands in the genre. They need to give the songs breathing room to have the transitions between those different elements feel natural. And the fact they managed to pull it off is why I think they're a really fucking cool band. If you were to put a gun to my head and ask me what my favorite Mystifier song is, I'd probably go with an Elizabethan Devil Worshipper's Prayer Book. And it seems like the band themselves really enjoyed this song because they kind of recorded it 4 different times. It first showed up on their very first demo, Tormenting the Holy Trinity, and it was initially entitled Ancient Prediction, My Eternal Nightmare. The signature fast part in the second half of the song didn't quite exist in its modern form, but there was a faster part towards the end of the song that went a little something like this. The The Sarcophago influence is pretty obvious there with that really fast, aggressive snare drum. The second version of the song they recorded was on 1991's Aleister Crowley demo. In this version, the fast part takes on its modern character and is significantly more sophisticated in its approach. Drum part's a little bit more complex on this one, kind of doing the Dave Lombardo from Slayer ride cymbal thing, but sped up a whole lot, and yet maintaining the Slayer degree of precision. This would further evolve on the third version of their song, which appeared on their first full-length album. There you can see the drumming has evolved even beyond that ride cymbal Slayer thing into the realms of what we might nowadays call ambient black metal, while still maintaining that aggressive, warlike feeling. And this would culminate in my favorite version of that fast riff, which appeared on their second album. I mean, that's pretty much a perfect blend of warlike brutality and evil, crepitant atmosphere. Not the sort of thing that many bands can pull off. The signature slow part of this song has also evolved over the years. In its first demo version, they really make good usage of instrumental separation in the production by having the bass guitar sort of accentuate those drone notes. It actually reminds me a lot of stuff that Mortuary Drape would end up doing later on. Then in the second version, the riff itself is actually somewhat simplified because it doesn't have that bass accentuation, but the atmosphere is even more leaned into with the way that particular demo is produced. Almost kind of a Swedish chainsaw thing going on, but then that really weird hissy cymbal just gives it this foggy, misty, creepy feeling. Then on their first full-length album, okay, first things first, I gotta bring up how fucking sick the production on the first Mystifier full length is. Holy shit, that was fucking balls heavy. But also, they bring back the sort of note accentuation from the first version of the song with a less distorted and buzzy sounding sort of lead guitar overlay. Then when you get to the final version of the song on their second full length album, you can really hear why this is maybe my favorite Mystifier song, and probably my favorite Mystifier album. All right, here it comes. Check this out. That's right, baby. We got keyboards doing that accentuated part now. But these ain't no Cradle of Filth keyboards. These fuckers are mean sounding. Maybe some of the best usage of synthesizers in early 90s black metal. Noticeably outstanding just how evil it fucking sounds. And that sort of sophistication doesn't stop with just the inclusion of keyboards, because they also utilize lead guitar in a very interesting way, where it becomes an integral part of the song's structure overall. Lead guitar was always a very important element of what made Mystifier Mystifier, and it's a big part of what makes their music just so uniquely eerie sounding. Now, I don't want to just jump into the second Mystifier album, my personal favorite, without giving a little bit more love to the first album, 1992's Wicca, because I've always seen Wicca and Goetia as being companion albums. I mean, my personal copy, I got like a 2 CD reissue that has both albums put together, but also Wicca, as I mentioned earlier, just has this like heaviness and brutality that you don't really get from any other band in quite the same way that Mystifier do it. This particular song is actually the one I utilized at the very beginning of the episode to show off how they updated the slower Sarcophago parts with an even more extreme atmosphere. And you're definitely getting that crazy atmosphere with this fucked up narrated sort of intro leading into drum beats functioning as a heartbeat over drones, a sticky morass that the band sort of pulls itself out of. The song kind of creates itself from formless chaos with this spectacular, slow, doomy kind of black metal riff, complete with another really good lead guitar overdub. It's also got an awesome kind of counterpoint follow-up riff right here, Just a decadent parade of blasphemous obscenity. But remember, I have called these guys a war metal band, and you're about to find out fucking why. Because they're very much capable of getting fast and brutal on you. See, that's what I mean when Mystifier had a way of combining those two almost contradictory styles into one song. Like, there's a reason this fucker is 8 minutes long, because it's the only way to make all of these different component parts work in a musical sense. You gotta have proper songwriting dynamics, like where they pull back on the drums a little bit here before then exploding out into some more punishing brutality with this chaotic, almost disorganized sounding riff that eventually does start to make sense if you pay attention to it. From there, we get a bit of a lead guitar segue into one of the best groove-oriented black metal sections I've ever heard in this song. I also really like the fucked up, kind of harmonized vocals they got going on here. This riff almost sounds like their take on something like Suffocation's Liege of Inveracity. And then you gotta have the lead guitar, as I mentioned, majorly important for Mystifier's sound overall. Comes in with this tapping, then you get this doomy, just eerie sounding simplistic figure that, despite its primitivism, adds a whole lot to the song in terms of emotional impact and narrative impact. And their mastery of epic song narratives would only increase when we get to my personal favorite Mystifier album, the second one. Like, you know they're gonna hit you with that good doom shit because it's Mystifier and they're fucking awesome at that. But they're also good at speeding it up and adding in another extra little lead guitar atmospheric overdub before then plunging into the depths of the abyss with some absolutely savage sounding war metal shit. Like my other two favorite war metal bands, Beherit and Sacramentary Abolishment, these guys are really good at working in these dynamic shifts between slow and fast parts without making it sound too forced. And like those other two bands, these guys are supremely catchy. I mean, I get this riff stuck in my head all the fucking time. Definitely a standout bit of this particular album, but actually what really sticks out for me regarding this song is its tripartite ending, where you got this slow riff that comes in initially just with that heavy sort of rhythm guitar, to which they then add another one of their great lead guitar overdubs to further enhance the atmosphere. And from there, they bring in some weird, eerie keyboards to close everything out. Really cool way to end a song. I actually had to cut out a lot of the longer parts of that lead guitar section and some of the more experimental keyboard bits, because like I mentioned, these songs are long as fuck, but I would recommend checking out that whole Goetia album and the whole Wicca album. Absolutely mandatory purchases for any discerning black metal fan. What do you do after you drop two classics like that? Well, if you're Mystifier, you decide to change everything up again. You get even weirder, even stranger. You put out the third album after some pretty intense lineup shuffles, and you call it something weird like The World Is So Good That Who Made It Doesn't Live Here. And you kick shit off with
And take fire, there's fire, wait on them so time.
Pause.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that vocal performance. Apparently in their rehearsal room, their vocalist started messing around doing some operatic tenor shit, and Beelzebub actually thought it sounded pretty cool. And he's like, hey, you should do that in our black metal songs. Sometimes on the album it works. Other times it's a little rough. It's just sort of one of this album's quirks you gotta get used to. But the music itself on this one, pretty massive stylistic change from the first couple albums. I personally love it though. Very much leaning into the self-consciously weird territory, and also incorporating, at least to my ears, a decent amount of death metal of a rather warped variety, occasionally akin to Morbid Angel, or in this case coming up here, maybe even like death metal era Napalm Death, specifically the Harmony Corruption, the Utopia Banished varieties. Although obviously the weirder elements of that sound, like that fucking tribal drum beat. Then they come in with this part, utilizing some great artificial harmonics on the guitars, kind of hitting some of the same compositional stylings as Immolation and Incantation, but in a black metal form. And then of course that lead guitar is going to be a big thing. In the case of this album, it's provided on a session bassist by Paolo from Headhunter DC, and man, does he fucking bring the Morbid Angel style weirdness, bendy Azathothean shit, leading out into some demonically triumphant war metal riffing, which brings us on to another major feature of this album, its massive expansion of the keyboard-based ambiance they introduced on the third album. Again, all these songs are long, they've got a whole lot of different sections, and just a whole lot of crazy fucking shit going on. Ooh, this song right here. You remember earlier, sometimes I said that the weird vocals actually do work for this album's advantage. This would be one of these cases. When he gets very melodic with it, I think it actually definitely works for the sound they're going for here. And then like this shit, fucking triumphant, melancholic, melodic black metal maybe? Not something you would expect from Mystifier, but they fucking pull it off. Kind of reminds me of the jump between the second and third Hypocrisy albums. Like the acoustic stuff here actually works really well. You wouldn't expect that from, you know, a band that started out as a war metal band. But it helps because they definitely don't wimp out. Like there's still plenty of heavy riffs as you're hearing right now. They just managed to make it all work with all of these bizarre new elements they've introduced to their sound. Almost it's like a completely different band at this point, but a really fucking good band. That's the main thing it has in common with early Mystifier. I mean, I could see only liking the first two Mystifier albums, but if that's the case, you're fucking missing out. And it is still Mystifier in some sense, as evidenced by the fact that it's got that ultra important for the song structure kind of lead guitar thing going on. The world is so good that who made it doesn't live here. Not only is that a actually pretty interesting philosophical statement if you really break it down, like that's some real misanthropic pessimism, but it's also an absolutely essential classic of the lunatic fringe of 90s black metal.
I'm so fucking crazy. Whoa, shit.
From this album forward, Mystifier actually followed a pretty similar career path to another one of my favorite bands, Verathron, and that their later material doesn't quite hit the heights of their classic eras, but it's still very respectable stuff and very much worth listening to. And like Verathron, they kind of kick off this era of their sound with an EP released in 1999, that being the lengthily titled Demystifying the Mystified Ones for a Decade in the Earthly Paradise. On this EP, the songs are simpler in structure, but they're still fucking cool. I mean, you hearing this necrophobic-ish lead guitar? Who doesn't like that? At least to my ears, there seems to be a lot more kind of a classic heavy metal feeling to the songs on this EP, which is interesting to hear reinterpreted through the lens of a weird fucking extreme metal band like Mystifier. But the songs still manage to cram in all of those same weird change-ups that you've come to expect from Mystifier over the years. It's just done in a more concise and vaguely more pop-oriented, more listenable format. Also, the lead guitar is fucking sick. Same session guy from the previous album coming back with a slightly more melodic take on his sound from that album. Particularly when it gets into the more sonorous, kind of melancholic moments like right here, it actually gives me a bit of a Hellenic black metal vibe. And there's plenty of quality shredding going on as well. Very much a sort of fun-oriented EP, particularly when compared to their rather intellectually weighty earlier material. This sort of simplification of their sound would continue on the full-length album to follow in 2001, that being Profanus, which I would consider to be this band's Reign Chaos, except I actually like this album, and Reign Chaos kind of fucking sucks, which I know for some reason is like a cardinal sin to say that shit nowadays.
A pittance to protect you from evil.
I am evil.
Look, man, I was there when that album came out. Nobody liked that shit. But what I find to be even more interesting is the follow-up to the Profanus and Demystifying the Mystified Ones era of Mystifier, that being the much-belated sort of comeback album from 2019, Protagoni Mavi Magica Dynastia. Because a lot of bands, when they do a comeback album, they say, oh, it sounds like all of our different old stuff put together mixed with the new stuff. This one, that description actually kind of fucking fits, and it's a solid, interesting album. Like, it brings back that layered doominess of their first two releases, but kind of runs it through the heavy metal filter of their later albums. But then there's this chaotic death metal shit going on. The drums, they might not be as fast as their older material, but they're in a similar vein with that really heavy snare. Definitely very much a war metal style of drumming. And there's some weird fucking dissonant shit like you hear on their third album, as well as those crazy fucking segues from that same era. And they also bring back something else from that third album era of the band, that being their utilization of orchestration and kind of an almost Hellenic feeling to a lot of the music. It really does sound like they took every other era of Mystifier, combined it into one album, and it actually turned out pretty fucking decent. I would say they're definitely another older band to keep an eye on, much in the vein of Immolation or Verathron. But whatever you do, if you don't get those first 3 Mystifier albums, you're a fucking idiot. Later, dudes, I'm out.
You know, dude, screw you to hell. You're being a real idiot. It's like, you know, I'm not saying you're the worst person in the world. Believe me, I'm not calling you a serial killer. I'm not saying you're the worst person in the world. But you're being a real smart ass.